So this is Don Stokes, and he is the producer. He's
One of
the producers for the Horton Foot, The Road to Home documentary that will be playing. It's actually the very first thing we're playing at the festival on Friday night, September the 13th at 7 p.m. Ann Rapp is the filmmaker, and she will be here. She'll be here for the festival, and so I asked Dawn to come today so that we could talk about the documentary and how it all tied in together. Do you know because you know the background of how she got started with this?
And just to say, the documentary will be a great setup for Tender Mercies, since we have Robert Duvall and Horton and other people that were involved in the film. Bruce Beresford, the director, talk about how that all came about. And I think it's really important that Kelly said, that it's about the independent movement, in that Horton, there are my generation of filmmakers, meaning crew people, directors, producers in Texas, owe a tremendous amount of their success and their growth to Horton Foote. He was one of the first independent filmmakers who took it upon himself to start making films, primarily because after he won the Oscar for To Kill a Mockingbird screenplay, he went out to Hollywood and they wanted him to do more adaptations of other writers' works rather than produce works of his original plays and screenplays. And he started out as a playwright. I actually started out as an actor, and then discovered that he was a better playwright than an actor. And so in order to get his films made, he had to become an independent film producer. And through the middle part of his career, he made a lot of films in Texas, and a lot of crew people and a lot of people who went on to make their own films in Texas worked on Horton's films like Trip to Bountiful, 1918, which was Matthew Broderick's first movie. And he got that part because his father had worked with Horton on Broadway. And, of course, Tender Mercies and Valentine's Day, a lot of independent films that Horton did in and around Texas. There was a group of us, and it primarily was Ann Rapp, who had met Horton when she was the script supervisor on Tender Mercies and became a close personal friend of the family. Joe Dishner, who was a location manager on a number of Horton's films, and he later also went on to becoming a producer on feature films, as well as working on this documentary with us. And Mark Birnbaum, who is a filmmaker in his own right and specializing primarily in documentary work, and me, and Horton was getting older, in his late 80s, early 90s, throughout the period of the film, and he was working on two plays. Dividing the Estate, which was going to premiere at the Booth Theater in New York, and The Orphan's Home Cycle, which was basically a rework of 9 of his plays to one 9-act play, which would take place over 2 days performances. And The Orphan's Home Cycle was primarily the story of Horton's father. And so he was working on both of those simultaneously, and the idea was, wouldn't it be great if we could document Horton's creative process, and while he was still alive, and see him going through the preparation for the productions of these plays. And it expanded to be, to get more of the story of who Horton was in a bigger picture and his importance, because he is he won the Oscar for the adaptation of To Kill a Mockingbird. He won the Oscar for the original screenplay of Tender Mercies. Geraldine Page won the Oscar for her performance in Trip to Bountiful. Robert Duvall won his Oscar for his performance in Tender Mercies. He won the Pulitzer Prize for Man from Atlanta, a play that was not made into a film. If you'll see the documentary, the reason it was not made into a film, because the studios wanted to do it, but they wanted to make sure that the young man the man from Atlanta, who never appears in the play, would be a presence physically in the movie, and Horton just said no. And so they didn't do it. But here is a man who, you'll see his list of works, there's over 100 plays, screenplays, screen adaptations, things that he had done throughout his life. And he was a native Texan, born in Wharton, Texas, and did a lot of his work in Wharton. Used Wharton as sort of a template to tell basically the story of a family or families. He's been called the American Chekhov, which I think is pretty accurate. His work translates across different cultures, as well as different time periods, because there's a central core to his work that we all can identify with, whether you're from Texas or not. Edward Albee, the playwright, said that Horton wrote about real people, and that's all he needed was real people to tell a compelling story. And Horton basically, Trip to Bountiful, won a Tony Award for the leading actress for an all-black cast adaptation of Tender Mercies. Trip to Bountiful. Trip to Bountiful was one of the very first films of plays that had Lillian Gish as the star on Broadway. So here's from, the 40s through the 50s, through the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and the aughts, that he was relevant, doing work that people saw and appreciated. But not a lot of name recognition. Most people had no idea who Horton Foote was. So we want to make this documentary to try to honor Horton. And as is the case with most documentary films, fundraising is a nightmare. No one wants to give you money to make a documentary because typically there's not a lot of big payoff at the end. Fortunately, we had the wherewithal that we could, as a group, put some of our money into it just because we loved Horton so much. And we got a primary grant from the Houston Endowment, which really got the project to moving forward. And along the way, we got some additional funds and grants from other people. And as people learned about it, a lot of people wanted to be involved in it, but they wanted to control it, so that kind of went by the wayside. But you'll see in the credits at the end, we owe a debt of thanks to Tito's Vodka for helping us get across the finish line with a donation of funds. But this was over 10 years from start to finish to get this film done, and that is not unusual for an independent film, from the conception and ideas to get through that. And the other people joined us along the way, most predominantly Bill Schwartz, who came on to help me with some of the filming of some of the work that we did. Generally, it was a 2-3 man crew. doing most of the work. Some of the things that we did in Hartford Stage, we actually hired people up there because it cost too much money for us to travel there. And we interviewed a lot of people that you will recognize their names and faces because the Horton meant so much to the theater world, to the film world, and to television. And we also, tried to make it where it really told the story of Horton's family as part of this process because they were all integral in his success. I don't know really what else to really tell you at this point, but if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer, and they'll probably jog a memory here or there that I can also share. One of the last components that really kind of brought the whole thing together, we talked to Betty Buckley, not the actress, but Betty Buckley, the producer, who was teaching at Texas State in San Marcos, and got her to round up some people from the school and the area around Austin, San Marcos to do readings for us of Horton's work. That gave us the opportunity to expand the scope of what we could show of Horton's work because we fair used the documentary, which means that we could not tell Horton's story without showing examples of his work.
Right.
And we had a law firm who's kind of the best at doing legal interpretation of fair use come on board to help us make sure that we stayed within the bounds. But anything that we filmed that involved actors acting, then we got into union issues with either the stage actors, mostly stage actors, since most of the work that we were doing were for plays. So we did wind up having to pay some royalties to actors that appear in scenes from some of Horton's films. And but because our budget was so limited, a lot of what we got was from fair use footage that we were able to obtain. If you go to a studio and say, hey, I need to use a clip of this film, they say, okay, well, you're going to have to pay for the rights to show it. You're going to have to pay for the transfer fees. You're going to have to pay all of these use fees and everything. And what fair use does is if it's available in a media, say a DVD, for example, through fair use, because we are telling the artist's story, we're able to use those clips without having to go through the studio and pay for them. So I think the quality of all of our clips are pretty good. It varies a little bit based on the source we were able to come up with. But we also tried to go through American Masters, who basically, again, wanted to take over the project. And the budget that they revised for us was over $1 million in order to, because they don't believe in fair use, or they can't through their contracts. So we had to look at all the rights fees that we were going to have to pay. And American Masters was wanting to broadcast the product, but did not want to put any funds in the project. And that's one problem you'll often run up against. So after working with them for about a year and going through various other fundraising processes that they connected us to, we just had to abandon that and kind of plow on with the way we did. We're really proud of the way the project turned out. I think it's a really good movie.
And it's actually our newest film that we have in the festival, because it came out in 2021 on the festival circuit. So this is going to be the North Texas premiere. So we're very, very proud of that.
Right. It's pretty limited, distribution. You can get it through
You need to come see it.
Apple, but you need to come see it
at the
here
festival.
because then you don't have to pay as much for it, right? But
And you
it's,
get the double feature with Tender Mercies.
that's right. And Tender Mercies is a really good film. If you haven't seen it in a long time,
And we will have, so Ann Rabb, who is the director for Horton Foote's documentary, like Don was saying, she also was a script supervisor. And one thing I forgot to mention is that we'll have Janine Oppenwall will be here. She was the art director for Tender Mercies, and it was her first film that she was art direction for. And so she's coming in, and she's going to do a little show and tell.
That's great.
Of her vision of what she was seeing with the film, and then what it actually became. So I'm really excited to see that, and to have her talk to us, about her work. Because she is Oscar nominated as well. So it's so that's going to be that Friday night. Friday the 13th is going to be great. We're really lucky on Friday the 13th.
does anybody have any questions that they want to ask?
You said it took us 10 years start to finish, but
Pretty much, yeah.
Like actual principal photography, how long the process was that?
Well, I mean, there's footage of Horton driving around Wharton in a car, and that was the first thing that was done, even before the full piece was conceptualized. It's like, let's get some footage of Horton while he's still around, and we can do that. So there are elements that were shot throughout the whole process. I think our last interview that we did was with Rick Linklater, who is a huge Horton Foote fan, and that was probably done in 2019. So it was filming throughout the whole process. I think it is relatively transparent, other than the aging of Horton. The oldest footage would be the footage in his home and around Wharton, and that's probably the part that looks the oldest, because it is the oldest.